Alright guys, I'm going to go ahead and just get started with the live stream. I was having some technical difficulties this morning, so All right, let's go ahead and get started. I was having some issues this morning with the live stream, so starting a little bit later than usual. Not feeling super great, so I might go a little bit shorter than normal, just dealing with a cold or something. But wanted to get the live stream out since I didn't do one last weekend, and just talk about the markets. So go ahead and give me an audio check, and then we'll go ahead and just dive into, what I'm seeing, what the stock, your individual stock picks. We'll just go for a little while. The one thing that I did want to talk about, obviously, is the market seems to be in kind of mania mode. So you're going to see a lot of bullish media press on CNBC if you watch that. So that's obviously, the market closed above 5,000, the S&P. So that's obviously going to stir up a lot of the bulls. And again, you're going to see, like in my comments, I see a lot of, just kind of, what is it, like bragging, I guess. That's okay. I mean, at the end of the day, people do what they want to do. But the markets, they've been going up. All right. Now I haven't, one thing, you get a lot of people, because I've been looking for kind of a swing trade on the short side. They come out and say things like I've been short the whole time, things like that. And that's not the case. I mean, I have not been short the whole time. So we're looking for a short now, because the charts tell us that that's, coming soon. And if you're not looking for a short, or if you're long and bullish, I think it's only responsible and prudent to at least trail your stops. There's no reason to exit long positions if you're already in those long positions, because there's really no sell signals. So just as I can't make a case to really enter into a heavy short position, there really isn't a case to exit a heavy long position, really. So until we get sell signals, that we can continue to go higher. All right, and looking at triple Qs, this is the pattern that I've got right now. It is a bearish rising wedge pattern. All right, look up here. Here's the resistance. This is the daily chart. Resistance. Kind of held it right there. There's another tag. So I think next week they're probably going to come up and tag the top of that trend line. They might pop it. Sometimes these bearish rising wedges, when the momentum's really strong, you'll see some sort of like a move that pops above the bearish rising wedge. It's ultimately usually going to be a kind of a stop raid, and then it'll come down and fail. So be on the lookout for that. Again, there's no reason to be shorting. So, I'm not jumping in long and just piling in and FOMOing and all that. That's called chasing. And typically people that chase end up getting burned. But, if it wants to do that kind of final blow off move, then obviously it's just going to do it. All right. I'm not going to be jumping on and chasing it. But I'm not also going to be taking on losses because I'm shorting. Again, I haven't seen a sell signal, excuse me, on the daily chart. So we need to wait for that. But there's your bearish rising wedge. And then on your support, you've got support. All right, it's a pretty well-defined wedge. I mean, it is a pretty clean wedge. The measured target of the wedge is typically the widest part of the wedge, and that's basically that. So depending on when you break, that would be kind of the move down, or at least the first move down. So let's say we break sometime soon, maybe next week. It's going to project us to move down. I got to, maybe something like that, down around 402.84. We're pretty far away from the 200-day moving average too. Usually when you get that far away, you're probably going to come down and test it too. So could be something like we just, work our way lower, the 200 comes up, something like that. And then obviously the 200, we'd need to break the 200 to signal kind of a larger term sell signal. But again, this market and this chart, especially in tech, has all the signs of a a bearish move. All right, we just don't have the sell signal, so we just have to sit here and wait, and that's kind of what I've been doing. Last week, I didn't do a whole lot of trading. I mean, I'm watching the markets, I'm looking for the opportunity, but really, unless you're long and just holding long, there's been no opportunity. A lot of the people recognize this as well. There's a lot of people that are bragging about being long right now, and that's great. I'm glad, but it's only good if you are able to hold on to those gains. And most people that are long now, they were long, and let me go back in time. They were long back here in 2021, and they were bragging about it and everything here too. I heard the same kind of comments and everything back then, and then that they rode this down. Is most people that are kind of always long, they're just going to ride this down, hoping for this. And in this case, they did get that, but you don't always just get that. Okay, so that is really that. And I also want to point something out, all right? And then we can move on. On the triple Qs, here's your divergence, all right? This is telling me that each new high is on less momentum. Now, we could burn through the divergence. If that happens, that changes the technical look of what I'm looking at. But as of right now, it's divergence. We keep popping up and making new highs in price while momentum is not able to make new highs, and it's a continuation of the divergence. All right, so if that remains, nothing says it's going to remain, but if it does, then that tells me that we're likely going to see a pretty sizable move to the downside. But we need the sell signal that's going to come on a break of this trendline support that I've got marked out right there. Okay, so we're just waiting for that. And I want to point this out. If I go back and look at 2021, you'll see, the same kind of stuff. The market was just marching higher. Excuse me. And obviously it can continue to go higher, but there's the negative divergence from back then. All right, you see the momentum just dropping off, and yet price, if I kind of have to zoom in just to be very clear about it. Let me kind of clean this up. Sorry guys, trying to zoom in, and I got a lot of past lines. There it is. So that's back in 2021. Look, there's a new high. This was basically an equal high, so another divergent high. And you can see this whole pattern right in here. All right, that lasted for November to about January, about 2 months basically, and it was divergence. You had negative divergence. So for 2 months, the bulls that didn't pay attention to the divergence or didn't think that meant anything, because that you get a lot of people that think it doesn't mean anything. They stayed long, and then ultimately, they were buying dips. All right, buying dip. They were buying dips. They were buying dips, and then boom, trapped. So, and they gave back, basically 6-7 months worth of gains in a matter of just 5 or 6 weeks. So by the time you realize that it's no longer a dip, usually you've given back huge gains, and that's just how that works. But that was the negative divergence back then, and then that was obviously the start of that bear market right there. So that is that's what it looks like today. We're kind of seeing the same setup. So we'll just see if that plays out. But we need the sell signal, and we don't have that yet. So that is that one. And then just across the board, like AVGO, I was looking for that to break, but they're going to all break together, most likely. This one has, straight up trend line support right there. On Friday, they basically opened it kind of right there, and then, there's the buyers stepping in because they're buying at support, which makes sense. To buy at support is objective. We have negative divergence, and we're just waiting for that sell signal. So this one kind of looks the same. The big one, though, is this NVIDIA. And NVIDIA is, I have this trend line. I don't know if it was holding to this trend line for a long time. It broke, and now it's kind of back testing. So I'll leave it. It's not a trend line that I'm trading off of. I'm not like buying this into resistance or anything. The momentum's strong, so I want to see this I need a reversal candlestick, a gap down, a bearish engulfing candle, some sort of some sort of sign that this is top, or that it's topped. Doesn't really have the daily divergence that is super clean, because it's made relatively strong momentum recently. So this one has to break in order for the market to break, because if you look at the market cap of this thing, it's such a heavy hitter now because it's exploded. Basically, it's like a mania. That the indices, it's going to be heavily weighted in the indices, triple Qs and SPY. Excuse me. So this one has to break in order to bring the indices down. And I have a longer term trend line. It's all the way down here. Support. There's another reaction. There's another. So the big sell signal will come on a break of this trend line, and we just don't have that. We're well above that, obviously. In order to get down to the trend line, it's got to drop from where it's at now 20% just to get to the trend line. So if you have a 20% drop in NVIDIA, you're definitely going to have buyers stepping in. And so it's got to come down. You're probably going to have a bounce, and then I think it could break. But we'll have to see what it looks like after it comes down, and if you get that bounce. Okay, so that one is, that's a key kind of component to the indices right now. Let me go through and look at some of these other ones. Apple, obviously, Apple's kind of looks weaker. So keep an eye on that. Sometimes what you'll notice, though, the markets like to play games with these Mag 7s. They've been doing it for years. So some will be strong, some will be weak, and then they'll rotate into others. They'll rotate out of some and into others, and they'll just kind of move money around from these Mag 7 stocks. So it keeps the indices up because these Mag 7 stocks are kind of all that matters. And as long as, if money's coming out of one and going into the other, then it's basically a net, equal, and the indices kind of stay propped up. So maybe the buyers will step in here. It's not really objective to buy right here, but you do have this uptrend line to watch. So no sell signal again, so it could catch a bid. Google's kind of, I have this trend line here. It rallied right to it, so I guess the market's respecting it. You got resistance. So again, Google is at resistance. I don't really see divergence on that one. I mean, you do have a large divergence here. I guess we can call that divergence. We just don't have it recently. Recently you had a lower low and then a higher. You're moving up in momentum, up in price. So we'll see. And you got this double top right there. There's the double top. You had the big gap down, so it could be, I don't know. This one might want to go on, kind of rally a little bit more. It's, again, nothing I want to short right now. Microsoft, it does have the divergence. It's there, negative divergence, and making a new high. No sell signal. So this one you probably have to extend that trend line like that now at this point. So we need a sell signal, some sort of reversal. They're likely all going to come at once. Or you might see like one start to break down and then the others hold up, and then maybe one by one until it kind of tips over and then they all flush out. But did I cover Amazon? Amazon, potential for an island cluster top. We need to see that gap down. Until then, we don't have a sell signal. We have an uptrend line to watch. I can just extend that out right there. And I would just respect that uptrend line for now. That uptrend line is the trend, and the buyers are stepping in at that trend. So we need to see a break of that trend in order for a sell signal to be initiated. Potential for an island cluster. There's potential there, but there's not any sell signal. So if you're bullish, you could buy at support. That's the thing. You could buy here at this trend line. It's a pretty steep trend line, so I could see that one going. And then you have a major trend line where it's objective to buy at down here. Okay, that would be the objective area, the most objective area at least. And that's a higher probability trade would be to be buying down here at this trend line. Okay, for a bounce. Okay, so that's those stocks. Let's get into your guys' stuff. Netflix. That one's still sitting at resistance, I believe. Yeah, just kind of hovering at that resistance line. So there is the daily chart. This thing was just marching up this trend line right here for a while. That trend line broke, so you had a sell signal right here. There's your sell signal. Okay, that sell signal came with negative divergence. See the divergence? The divergence really existed here. That's a divergent high. And then you broke trendline support. And now you're back testing. So there's back test 1. This is back test 2, essentially. And so this is at resistance. It's an objective short. There's no real sell signal, though. I mean, what I would prefer to do on this, because you had a sell signal here, so it made sense to short right there. And if you did that, you were rewarded, with 15% gain or whatever. Okay, the back test here, I mean, if you shorted this back test right there, then in the short term you were rewarded for 7% gain. If you short this back test, I think you could be rewarded, but what I would prefer to do is wait for some sort of a rejection candle, a big red candle, bearish engulfing, doji candle, something that tells me that it's the selling volume's coming into this. Right now, with the momentum in the markets and the tech stocks, they're going to hold this thing up until the selling volume shows up there too. So big red candle, some sort of a reversal candle would be the sell signal on that one. We just don't have it yet. Snow. Okay, so snow, divergence, but it's not confirmed. So there's your negative divergence, but it's not confirmed. So what you'd want to see is the PPO start to turn down, do a bearish crossover, the RSI start to turn down. That would give you confirmed divergence. And then at that point, you have divergence. You can look for a sell signal. I've got this trend line right here, and the sell signal would come on a break of that trend line. Support, support, support. So I think you're going to come back down to this trend line, and if you have divergence at that point, I'd be on the lookout for a break of trend. We don't have that yet. It might come on earnings. It's hard to say. But, a break of that trend line would be the sell signal until we get that, this thing's up. Okay, Vale. This is what mining stock. I mean, on this one, obviously the dollar, you're going to want to keep an eye on the dollar. I mean, it looks like we got some support kind of in this area. Let me just fine tune this. Yeah, right about there looks to be pretty decent support. That's the trend line. That's trend line support. I'd be a buyer down there at about 12, 12.30, or you don't need to, you never really want to wait for the last penny. At least I prefer to step in early. All right. I'd rather step in early, have my position secured versus miss it. But on this one and have to chase, if you miss it, I don't chase. So if you miss it, I don't want to step in late. I just will move on. But this one, you got support, support, support. 3 distinct reactions at that trend line. You have a breakdown here. Let me zoom in. This is a break of support right here. But the reason why I'm throwing that out, that break of support came with bullish divergence. All right, that was your bullish divergence there. So that break of support was a divergent low with a high probability of being a false breakdown, and it was. So I'd say I like that, I like that trend line as support. It's about 12.30-ish. Earnings coming out, I don't know. Maybe they bomb this thing on earnings and it drops down to support, and maybe that's a buying opportunity. Again, usually the best times to buy, typically the best times to buy is usually on bad news. And the best times to sell is typically on good news. But nobody wants to sell when things are, ripping to the upside and sky high But that's how tops come in, and nobody wants to buy when things are falling. But the best times to buy are typically, on counter trend news. So who knows? We'll see. But that's what it's not bad as a buy down there. No divergence really. Gold miners. I mean, gold. It's interesting, right? There's something. So the gold miners are kind of catching. You got to look at interest rates and the dollar. But like, before I go into the gold, I'll just do GDX. But if I look at TNX, all right, over the last, I mean, we're kind of making new highs. We haven't quite popped up and made a new high, but let's see if next week, if we start to pop up, that means interest rates are rising. This is the 10-year Treasury yield, and most lending instruments are based off of the 10-year. Even mortgages, a lot of people think the rates are based off the 30-year, but a lot of it's based off the 10-year. So if interest rates are rising, that's just negative for the market. This whole entire market is all based on, well, right now the market is based on two things. AI speculative hype mania, where people are just, buying anything AI, right? That typically doesn't end well. And typically in kind of bubbles like that, the early people make all the money, and the late to the party group, when everybody's piling in, most people in that group will lose money because they don't know when to get out. They just stay in, and then it drops so fast that it traps them into losses. And then interest rates. The other thing the market's based off of is interest rates. So, and the expectation of lower interest rates. All right. So if we get anything that's counter expectation, the market has to price that in. So rising interest rates would be negative for the market. We'll see if that happens. But again, we have interest rates that they look like they're starting to rise on the 10-year. Gold's obviously got the memo. I mean, you look right here. Look at that big boom. That's a big, powerful move in the 10-year, and with a gap up, that looks like a trend reversal, really, and with confirmation. So we'll see if that continues. But that interest rates are rising. Gold's kind of gotten the memo, at least the gold mining stocks, and but other interest rate sensitive things haven't, like tech. And I'm watching those home builders. That's a really, I think there's something there. I just haven't quite seen it yet really show up, so I haven't pointed it out, but I can look at that if you guys want. Gold miners here. So there's GDX making a new lower low. I just don't see anything here. I mean, I've got a larger trend line down here on GDX that we could probably respect, support. There's COVID. There's another reaction. So that's kind of a longer term trend. We're not too far away from that. That's about, let's see, 10% or so down there. So if I had to guess, with the way the chart looks now, it looks like we're heading down there. I don't see much else in the chart that tells me we're not, so that's what I'd expect. Okay, so that's the miners, that's GDX. And then just if I usually will look at Newmont or Barrick Gold. Again, Newmont had a bullish falling wedge, did break out. We never really got to the measured target of the wedge, which was up here. We never did. So, and we're back in that wedge. So I don't see a whole lot here. Big support on Newmont looks to be down around the 30.43, 30.50-ish. Expect if you get down there that you're not going to just stick the landing right at that right to the penny. Usually either the market makers will step in early or they'll slice through it a little bit to run stops. But it's good support down there, so sorry guys, I had to pause the mic. So that's what I see there. There's no bullish divergence. So Yeah, a little lower down there at support. I'd be more interested of being a buyer down there. I probably will buy some down here, but it's about, again, 7% to the downside. Okay, so that is the miners. What else do you guys want me to look at? Futures. This guy wants me to look at futures. Okay, I can look at futures. I mean, I'll go quick though. It's very similar. I mean, Nasdaq, to me, Nasdaq is everything. All right, in this market because of the weighting. I just need to know where the mathematically heavily weighted stocks are going, and I know where the market's going. Those heavily weighted stocks, because everything's passive. You have to think about passive inflows, money just kind of flowing into the market, and it's allocated into the indices based on the weighting of the stocks. So if you know where those big heavily weighted stocks are going, then that's where the market goes. It's just math. And so if you're interested in the indices, then that's typically what you want to do is look at those heavily weighted ones. So there's the futures. To me, not so much a wedge. Doesn't look as much like a bearish rising wedge like the triple Qs does. Maybe a slight wedge, but upward price channel, negative divergence, no sell signal. So again, just because I have the divergence here doesn't give me enough to enter a trade. It just tells me to be on the lookout for the sell signal. All right, and then if I get the sell signal, then I have everything that I need to trigger a trade, and we take the trade and manage our risk. Okay, so that's it on that one. ES, I'll look at that real quick. So there's your negative divergence on the ES. You've got, I'd say that's kind of a bearish. We'll go with that. It's not, I don't have a whole lot of data points to completely make that a wedge. So we'll just see again, but I'll stick with that for right now. Let me look at the SPY. Yeah, see, the SPY is kind of making a wedge. They're popping it a little, but that's not an impulsive breakout or anything, so it's close enough. So we'll just go with that. LAZR. Okay, auto parts. Well, let's see. Okay, bullish divergence. All right, so this is one I'd want to go long this one. All right, we got to see if there's an opportunity or a buy signal, but this one looks better as a long. So I'm going to go with that for my trend line. So no buy signal, but it has bullish divergence. I'd be on the look for a buy signal or a breakout. So this one you can see, look, you made a low, and then they dip down, run a bunch of stops, and that's a lower low in price, but a higher low in momentum. So bullish divergence. So I'd be looking for a break of trendline resistance. Right now you're at resistance, so it makes no sense to go long right here because you're at resistance. Nothing says we can't just dip down and make a new lower low. But if you get the breakout, that would be a long. I'm going to add this to my watch list as a long setup. That's a good one. I like it. Maybe look at some of these others in the auto industry as well, auto parts, so like O'Reilly's and some of these other ones. Okay, moving on. Pen. Oh, yeah, and the other one, guys, I did want to point this out. Disney, I hadn't been covering it, but I did cover it in some recent videos as a good long setup. And look, this is what I talked about back here. I said, look, there's your bullish divergence. It was building. It had a bullish falling wedge. And to me, it looked like one of the best long setups. It broke out there with a buy signal. and it was kind of a bull flag, and boom, continued. So the move's done now. Like after earnings with that big spike up, I'd be looking to I'd trail stops up and or just take profit. The move's I think done at least for that initial move, but you might have a trend line to kind of watch, but you're probably going to get a pullback to the trend line. Maybe you fill this gap. But again, that was that's a long that I like to take, okay? So, very similar to that one we just looked at, LAZR. Right. Pen. I can't make a trend line, a very clean one. It's basically where I had it is the best I can do. I don't know. It's not objective to go long right here. You're not at like support really. I mean, this is negative divergence right here. And so you can see like divergent high. You're starting to work your way lower. So I don't know. Maybe it wants to come down and test this trend line. It's I personally I would pass, but if it gets down here and it respects that trend line, that could be a buy. And then what was the other one? LESL. Okay, so there's your bullish divergence on the momentum. Okay. Divergent low. Divergent low. Divergent low. Divergence can last for a while, and that's why we don't just buy just because of divergence. But it does tell us that we're likely going to have a trend reversal somewhat soon. Where's the trend line? I'd probably go with that just because I have the most reactions there. You did break it here. No real negative divergence. All right, so here's the lesson to learn on this one. It took me a second to see it. So I'm going to go with this as my trend line. I do like that. Resistance, 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 resistance. Okay, lots of reactions on that. You did break it right here, okay? And that breakout did not have divergence, all right? You had bullish momentum. But here's the thing. You broke that right before earnings, all right? You broke out right before earnings. Breakouts that occur right before earnings are speculative and they are very high risk. So, you know, that was a trap. And so, yeah, that's the lesson to learn on that one. But I like that trend line. And if I zoom in, to me, I think you're going up to that trend line. With the bullish divergence, I would say you are definitely, I can't say definitely, but I'd say probably going up to the trend line. It doesn't mean you could do this and hit it here. I don't exactly know when or where it'll hit that trend line, but high probability you're going to go hit that trend line. It's not objective to buy here because you're already like, you know, up there a ways, but yeah. Okay, just a few more guys, and then I got to give it a rest. MPWR. There's an earnings spike. Semiconductors, so you know, we know the story with the semiconductors. And again, a lot of this, even if this one's not in the AI mania, because it's indexed, most likely indexed, it just gets dragged up with the others. So I think that's your uptrend. And then you have some negative divergence. It's not confirmed. There's no sell signal. So from my perspective, there's really nothing to do here. If you're long, you could just stay long, trail your stops. I wouldn't short it because I don't have a sell signal, just like the others. And if you're bullish, then I'd want to buy it at support, which is down quite a ways. Okay, Tesla. I didn't cover that one. I know that I have a few people that like me to cover that. So on the hourly chart, I saw this as a buy signal. To me, it looks like a buy signal. I've got bullish divergence. This is a divergent low. You have a downtrend line, and you broke the trend line. So, you know, that looks like a buy signal. So first target would be a gap fill. Okay. And if the market's going to hold up, if the triple Qs are going to hold up, like next week, then you're going to have people looking for things to buy, and this one's down, so buy this one. That's kind of how it works. So that's a 6-7% move to the upside. The major trend line on Tesla is this blue line, and so you could even go up there. You might have another move up there. But if anything, gap fill, and, you know, potentially up to that trend line. So that looks like a buy signal to me. It's an objective buy. I didn't point it out on Thursday because this is the daily chart. Looked like this. We barely got a daily close above that trend line. And then on Friday, when it was continuing to go, that's when I pointed it out. Okay. So to me, the real buy signal, that looks like a buy signal where you have an actual impulsive buying. It didn't look that impulsive the day before. So this probably gaps up on Monday, I guess. Okay, let me look. I've got a lot of videos on YouTube, I guess. That's crazy. Okay, DIS, I already covered that, right? Yep. ARM, that's just the mania stock. So, like, you know, if you're a gambler, maybe, you know, it could continue to go. It's not objective to buy, so it's just kind of like a game of hot potato. You never know when it's going to do that and then rip down. I would expect volatility to be really elevated, and very likely this one's in the hands of the day traders. And they're, you know, they'll chop you to bits. So, yeah, it's probably going to be pretty choppy on the intraday charts. I don't know what to say there. There's nothing to chart against. So, and then PLTR probably catching a bid. Yeah. All right. So, and that was sparked by earnings. Earnings gap up. Broke resistance. Yeah, I'd probably say it's a breakout. Well, yeah, I mean, that's a breakout. So until that fails, it's a breakout. All right, it's probably going to back test. All right, but the buyers, if this thing's bullish, the buyers should be stepping in on a back test. So if you're bullish on that, that's where you maybe want to buy. And just set your stop somewhere below, because if it fails, it's a false breakout, and then it should, you know, flush out. All right, and then I already covered Newmont, BMY, Bristol Myers Squibb. So on this one, you've got a downtrend. This one, I really respect this trend line here. That's a really well established trend. You've got bullish divergence, so your bullish divergence is here. So that tells me that you're, and it's on the PPO right there too, tells me that you're probably likely heading up to that trend line. So I would think that, yeah, that like I'd put a high probability we're going up to that trend line. I don't know when it will hit that trend line because it comes in at lower and lower price points as time goes on. So, you know, who knows? But you're in the middle, you know, you're kind of like, there's not really like a real definitive buy signal on this one. It's about a 6%, 7% to that trend line. So, like, what I'd be, you know, you could take the shot, you know, I mean, because it is a pretty good probability that you're going to go up there. But again, this bullish divergence that's on this isn't a buy signal. It can continue, which means you could drop down and put in a new divergent low. All right, that can just continue. So my preference on that would be to wait for a break of this trend line, so the resistance. You get a break out of that trend line, and now you've got yourself a swing trade that is, you know, it's an objective trade. So I'd either be looking to buy on a divergent low on like a, maybe if we can get some sort of a support line going. I can't, this support line here is not valid because I only have 2 data points. 1, 2. Unless I can make more. Let me see. I guess I could call that. Actually, never mind. So I'd want to buy on a divergent low into that support line way down below, or on a breakout above that resistance. Right here in the middle of the channel, there's just nothing to do. So, but it has a bullish bias. So that's BMY. Shop has earnings next week. Let me look. Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't gamble right ahead of earnings. It's already run up into earnings. You have negative divergence. If I had to guess what this is going to do, it's going to gap down on earnings. I can't really make a clean trend line though. Yeah, I don't know. If I had to guess though, it's going to gap down on earnings because of the divergence, and it's already run up into earnings. That's how I'd have to guess. So we'll see. I personally, I'd wait for earnings to clear out and then figure out a position. Affirm. Excuse me. All right. Sorry about all the coughing, guys. I don't feel horrible. I just have some congestion. This one is just chopping in this range right here. This is the, you know, there's the support. I pointed that out. You know, I was looking, it started to break. I pointed out in the private member group, but they held it up. You can see here, held it there, and then this day they were below, but they bid it back up. And then the top of the range seems to be, yeah, it still seems to be about this 48.26. So we're range bound right now. It looks like it's topping. We have negative divergence. See the RSI is starting to point down again. And so we have a negative divergence. We have what looks to be kind of a topping pattern. We need to break support so we can have a sell signal. So I need to see that we need to take out those lows. A breakdown of those lows would be your sell signal, and then from there you're probably going down to this trend line, ish, because I only have a couple data points. I don't know. I don't know about this trend line here, but this looks like good support down here, about 25-ish. And look, you just rocketed straight up from this range here, all right? Lots of trading took place in that range, and then you have a range up here, and right here you just have this rocket ship. So you break back into that, and you're likely just going to drop straight down to the bottom of that, or the top of that former trading range. So there's still a trade set up here. It's just not, it hasn't triggered yet. Okay. What's my opinion on LOI? Well, I don't really have one. My trend lines, this is the trend line that I had. They were respecting it for a while. Support, broke it, resistance. Now they've gapped up right at that trend line. They're way up here, burning through some divergence, it looks like. If this turns down really, really soon, we'll keep the divergence. But if it doesn't, you're going to burn through it. So what I would do, I'd prefer to just probably wait for a break of this trend line again. And then you also had this secondary trend line. It was kind of, they were holding. So I don't know. I'd probably wait for a break of both of these. You got a gap. All right. So let's say you come down. All right. The buyers are going to be back down in here. Wait for that to break. Once you get a break there, that's probably a sell signal. We'll see if the divergences are still intact at that point in time. Big gap to fill down below. So just need to see some sell signals on this. We just never really, got one going. What I pointed out earlier was this trend line. I said I'm watching this trend line for that to break. It never did, so we never got the sell signal. Okay, guys, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. Drop me a thumbs up on the way out if you haven't done so, and I will catch you guys on Monday. Take care. All right? Bye.